I could get a ham sandwich indicted by grand jury.
This is FairPlay on JusticeNews.net.
Bruce Smith has spent over 20 years in a Florida state prison as part of his conviction of life without parole for allegedly killing a 4-year-old boy, Cameron, in 2000, who was also the son of his girlfriend at that time. Bruce has maintained his innocence all these years, and he says he has never hit a child, let alone killed one, especially when he has helped raise 6 of his own kids. And joining me right now from Claremont State Prison in Florida is Bruce Smith. Thank you for your time, Bruce, and welcome to FairPlay.
Yes, sir, and thank you all, too, for having me.
So, Bruce, if I could take you back in time in the year 2000, I think it was July of 2000 when this ordeal occurred. Can you tell us exactly what happened?
Yes, sir, I sure can. Back in, I was a maintenance guy at an apartment complex, and me and Teresa had been dating, and it wasn't that long, probably like maybe a month or a month and a half, maybe. And she had asked me one day, I was at the apartment complex working, I was waiting on the tenants to come in to walk them through their apartment because they was just moving in, and she asked me to just look in on the boys. So at that time, I had my son there, he was there. And so I told her I would. Then that she told me they was already in bed, that, she didn't, all I had was look in on them. So I said, okay. Well, after all that, I ended up walking the tenants through their apartment. And then shortly after that, she came back. Maybe it took probably about a good hour. And then she came back, and we both went inside her apartment. I helped her take the clothes, and she went to the laundromat to dry clothes. And when she came back, I helped her take the clothes into her apartment, and we sat there and we talked for a little while. Teresa went in the room and checked on her son because they all was in the bed. And one of them had got up, and he came in the living room with us and was sitting with her. And prior to that, she went back in there maybe an hour or two, an hour and a half later and checked on him again. When she called me, she said, Bruce, he got some type of foam coming out of his mouth. It was either his mouth or his nose, I'm not sure. And so I didn't know what it was, so I told her I didn't know. And so I said, well, let's just take him to the doctor. Well, she didn't want to take him because she said she had been in trouble with children and families before, and they would want to take her kids or lock her up. So at that time, I didn't know what to say. So we just sit there for a little while, and I said, well, you don't know what's wrong. Then she came and told me he wouldn't wake up. So she was bouncing him off the bed, back and forth. And so I told her to stop doing that because she had his head, kind of wiggling back and forth like she could have hurt him. So she did, and we ended up taking him to the hospital. I drove her to the hospital with her son. And when we got to the hospital, she went in with her son, and I sat outside. And at the same time, my son was still there at her apartment. So she wanted me to go and get the kids, her other 2 kids, from her apartment and mine. So I did. I left the hospital, went to the apartment, and got the kids and brought them back out to the hospital. And prior to that, we ended up, when I got back to the hospital, the security guard was telling me that she had said that she had told the doctor that I must have done something to him. So I asked her, did she say that? She said she didn't. And so I said, well, I need to know what was going on. And so then the doctor came back out and said, well, we don't have the proper equipment here to do what we need to do to him. So we're going to have him shipped to another hospital. So at that time, she said, okay. So she said she would ride with him in the ambulance. So I took the vehicle, and I went and I dropped my son off at my mother's house while they went to the hospital. So by the time I get to the hospital, they was already there, and she and her family had started a lot of commotion, like they didn't want me around and asking me what did I do. And so I kind of got upset because I was trying to get her to tell them that I didn't do anything. I said, she know I didn't do anything. I said, you need to tell your mom and them what happened. Well, she wasn't saying anything, so and they was pretty much blaming me. So I turned around and left. I just left the hospital. And I went back to the next day to tried to see if she was all right, but her family was still there, and they wouldn't let her talk to me. So I just stayed away until she contacted me, which was a couple of days later, which she did tried to call me, and so I ended up calling her back. And at that time, I had met with it was an investigator there. And when I called out there, he said he wanted to talk with me. So he said, could you come out here? I told him, yeah. And I did. I went to the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
And after at that time, after I got to the hospital, he said he didn't have that proper paperwork there with him. And asked me would I go down to his office. So I've agreed to go down to his office with him. Went to his office. He stayed in there 4 hours. He was asking me all sorts of questions about different types of injuries. But, the only thing I can tell him is that I didn't see her do it, and I didn't do anything to him the time that I was there, which I wasn't, stationary in the apartment. I just went in and just kind of just stood outside until my tenants came, and then once I walked them through the apartment, and by then she was coming back, and so that's when I went inside her apartment. But that was it when it came to that.
Mm-hmm.
And so after we went to the hospital. I went back to the hospital. I left the detective's office, and I was on my way back to the hospital when they ran the truck off the road. And at the time I was riding in the van. It was her van. I was riding her van, and my sister-in-law and my niece was with me. And actually, my sister-in-law was the one driving, and they kind of ran us off the road in some unmarked cars. And so once they did that, they got out, they draw guns on me, and so they was trying to tell me to get out, but I wouldn't, because I say, well, y'all need to tell me what is this about. I'm not finna get out and y'all got guns drawn on me. So she made him, it was one of the detectives, made him put the guns down, and she asked me would I come out and talk with him, so I did. And then they placed me under arrest. They say for a failed child support or something concerning. No, they said a civil issue. It was a civil issue. So at that time, I went ahead and they took me down. They locked me up, took me to central booking. And when I got down there, they told me that it was something dealing with child support. So I said, it can't be. I said, because I pretty much got all my kids. So who am I on child support for? Well, that happened on a Friday. So I had to stay in the county jail all the way until Monday to go see the judge. Well, that Monday, when I went to go see the judge, they said that they had the wrong person for the child support. So at that time, he told me that they would release me, that by the time I get back to the county jail, as soon as my paperwork show up, they'll release me. Well, they ended up, the detective came in, right, they kept me downstairs because they told me there wasn't no sense in going back up to the cell because they said they're going to be releasing me. So I stayed downstairs, and the detective ended up coming in probably about another 20 or 25 or 30 minutes later and telling me that he had some bad news. So I asked him, what was it? And he told me that the child had died, and they was charging me with second-degree murder. And that's when
what did you say?
I couldn't believe it. I mean, I got real weak. He told me, go ahead and sit down, because I was like, man, I can't be. I said, man, I ain't never touched nobody. I never killed a baby. He was like, yeah. I said, man, that's a lie. I said, that can't be. It can't be. I said, I just can't believe this is going on. And so he said, yeah, well, based on what Teresa said, which was the kid's mother, I said, well, she got to tell. I need to talk with her, but she need to tell the truth, because I didn't do anything. I would never. She know I never touched those kids. And so they ended up locking me up at that point, and they took me back, and I haven't been out since. But that's when they charged me with it, and then later that year, they took me down before the grand jury and indicted me on first-degree felony murder. And that's what they took me to trial up under. So,
for a year, you sat in the jail?
Yes, sir, I did.
Did you have any attorneys at that time?
No, sir, I didn't. Well, they gave me a public defender during the time that I was in in the county jail, and me and her could never see eye to eye. She would never investigate, would never. I gave her people to call that was there, that know what happened, that knew her and had been around her, and she kept telling me, well, Bruce, they ain't gonna be no good because they wasn't at the house that day. And I say, well, these people be around her. I didn't even know her last name was Smith until I started going to trial. And, so I really didn't know her like that. But, I mean, like I say, I only knew her for probably 30 days or maybe a week or two over. But when they told me all that, all I could do was it stunned me because she wouldn't build a working relationship with me. And so I filed a motion, a Nelson. They gave me a Nelson hearing because I wrote a letter to the judge telling him that I didn't want her on my case because she wasn't building a working relationship with me. And I had told him the things that I had done. I gave her a lot of people to call, people that could have helped me and showing that what she had done, and she wouldn't go and investigate it. So during my trial, I had witnesses, which was one of them was my son who was there, and his mother had witnessed something. I think she had called her that day or something, and she called them during my trial and told them they wouldn't be needed because I had the case won. I had called all my witnesses and told me that she didn't need them because I had the case won. And the jury came back with a guilty verdict.
So the only witness to that was the boy's mother, Teresa.
Well, and she had put her two sons on the stage, on the stand, which both of them took the stand, and they was led by the state attorney because he basically just said what he felt had happened, and all they had to do was just say yes or no. But in the courtroom, they said, and he asked them, did they see the person that did this to their brother in the courtroom? Both of them said no. They didn't see the one that had committed that they say committed a crime. Now, they saying that one said that he was slammed into a wall. The other little boy say he was slammed on the floor. But the medical doctors, the personnel, said that only one thing happened, and they say the type of injury he had neither one of those things had happened. And they saying, so based on what the medical people that treated him saying, no, he couldn't have been slammed into a wall because it would have caused damage to his neck. It would have been a bigger spot on his head. It would have been damage to his shoulders. And if he'd have been slammed on the floor, it would have been a bigger abrasion on his head than what was there, And Teresa had admitted on the stand that she used to beat her kids with her fists, her shoes, or whatever she can get her hands on. And that was pretty much like the heel of a shoe. If you ever seen a woman's shoe with the little skinny heel, that's the size. It was just as big as your fingernail. The dot that was on the back of his head, what they showed during trial. And if he'd have been slammed onto the floor, they said it would have been a whole bigger spot because where the head would have made contact.
Yeah. And the mother was on record having issues with the Child Protective Services in the past. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. She did. She had been having problems with them, and she also was on a mental. I think she had been to a mental institution before. Something what had happened with the same boy, and she was married to a guy that was named Antonio Smith, and he went to prison for what he had done to the child, and she went to a mental institution. So, as far as I find this stuff out, prior to me being locked up and in prison, but she had been, then she said she had took the stand, she had been Baker acted, and she also had been on suicide watch.
So the police believed a testimony of someone who was on a suicide watch. Yes, sir.
They allowed her to take the stand.
And they also believed a 4-year-old boy's testimony.
She had well, he wasn't 4. The one that was 4 was the one that had died. The one was 7 and one was 8.
Okay. So they believed the 7 and 8-year-old boy's testimony and a woman's testimony who was on suicide watch for mental issues.
Yes, sir, she did.
And who was also on record because the kid also had some other bruises prior to this injury
Yes, sir.
And she was also on record for beating up this boy prior to his death.
Yes, sir, she did. She was already, even when the doctors came forward, all of them testified that he had various sores. He was covered in sores, they said, and some of them was in various stages of healing that couldn't have happened that day. And they said that he had a lot of scars that had healed, and they was healing in different colors. They can tell it by the different colors of the marks or what stage they was in.
All right, so that means the boy was being beaten up prior to you coming into the scene.
Yes, sir, he had been.
All right, so when she left and asked you to take care of the kids, where did she leave the boy?
She told me that they all was in bed, which they was. They all was in their room in bed. I'm assuming they
including your son?
No, my son was outside with me. He was outside helping me, because I had to go in and do some cleanup in the apartment before the tenants come.
All right.
So I had him with me at the time, and now when she came back, I was still outside, and my son was in there with her at that point.
All right, so she told you that she's going to go for the laundromat, and she's left her kids sleeping in the room.
Yes, sir.
Did you ever enter the room?
No, sir, I didn't.
So all that time, where did you sit when you entered the house?
Right when you come in her front door, she had a living room area, and I sat right in the living room area.
Did you see the boy during that time?
No, I didn't. He never
You
got
never
out.
opened the door?
No, sir.
You never opened the door to peek in?
No, sir, I didn't. He never got out. When she came back, she was the first one looking in. She went in there twice on 2 different occasions at 2 different times.
Okay. So what you're saying is that from the moment she left the house and the moment she came back in to tell you something's wrong with the boy, throughout that time, you never saw the boy, you never entered his room. Is that correct?
No, sir. I never entered the room. Only thing I did is came in the house in the living room, and I was sitting there with my son at the time.
Okay. So when they convicted you, what was there any DNA evidence?
Sir, what they had done during my trial, they did have what they thought was blood on the floor. They took pictures of it and they entered it into as evidence, but when the analyst, whoever they had test the stain that was on the carpet, they said it came back to be fingernail polish. But my thing was, I'd never seen, and I told them from the beginning, and when I saw it, it looked like blood, but it was red fingernail polish, and I told them that they was lying. I said, no, because I know I never went into any room, and then it was in their mother's room at that, so I didn't know how it had got there, but it did test negative for DNA.
All right, so what you're saying is that not in the room where the boy was sleeping, but in the mother's room, there was fake blood?
Yes, sir.
So somebody put nail polish in the mother's room on the floor?
They put it on the floor, yes, sir.
This is bizarre, don't you think?
Yes, it is. And when I saw it, that's the first time I had knew about it during my trial, because my lawyer never said anything about it to me. And during the trial, they were showing slides of different things in the house, and what they tried to say was that I had slammed them into the wall. They saying that I slammed them into a wall, and so they went in and they checked the wall. They say, well, all the walls was drywall. So they say the type of impact that he would have sustained, it would have damaged the drywall. Well, during trial, they came in and tried to say that being that I was the maintenance guy, that I knew how to fix drywall and that I had repaired it. But there was no way that could have happened, because they saying that I'd have had to cut out drywall, I'd have had to sand it down, I'd have had to glue it in, and then I'd have had to paint it in less than 30 minutes. And there's no way you can do that.
Yeah, there's no way you can do that. You need a couple of days to do that.
Exactly.
Yeah, so this is bizarre stuff. So what I wanted to know is that you never saw the boy that night. Is that correct?
No, sir. The only time I seen him was when she was bringing him out, and when she asked me to come to the room to see what was on his nose. I didn't get very close in. I stood to the door because she was just sitting in the bed. The bed was pretty much right by the room door anyway. But when I looked at it, that's all I did is look at it. And when we took him to the hospital, she grabbed him and we went to the hospital.
What did you see on the nose of the boy?
It looked like cold. It was something that was white. I thought he had a cold. He had asthma, and she had lied and told the doctors that she had an asthma machine in her room, but then they later found out that she didn't. During trial, she admitted that she didn't have it. She just said that to the doctor. But he was suffering from asthma. And so that could have been, he could have easily been going into an asthma coma or having an asthma attack, I meant to say.
Absolutely, it could be. And the defense didn't bother to look at any of these red flags?
No, sir, she didn't bring up any of that.
Uh-huh. Was that a public defender?
Yes, sir, it was.
Mm-hmm. So, I have an article in front of me from 2001, April 20 of 2001, by Miss Debbie Salomon Wickham. Wickham, I hope I got her name right, of the Centennial staff. This is from the Orlando Centennial.
Yes, sir.
And the headline says, "Man gets life sentence for killing his girlfriend's son." So right there, do you have any issue with this headline?
Yes, sir, I do. I did see that headline. One of the officers had brought it to me while I was still there in the county jail. And I totally disagree with it because the simple fact is, this girl is walking around. She's been abusing this child for probably since he's been born, and they all just lied and said that now I got to go to prison for a crime that I did not commit, and it hurted me a lot. Literally I cried because I just couldn't believe that was happening, and I tried to call a lot of my family members, which they comforted me. A lot of them was there during the trial, and I kind of felt that I had won the trial because a lot of the experts were saying things in my favor, but it just hurted me because to just think these people think that I'm some type of monster or something like that, which I'm not, and that hurted me because I never even touched my own kids. That's no talking about somebody else's, I wouldn't even let my kid's mom beat my children, And so, it just hurted me real bad to even think that they even thought of me like that.
Yeah, I had a conversation with Jenica.
Is
that correct?
Yes, that's one of my kids' mother. Yes.
Jenica. Yeah, Jenica, she has 2 kids with you.
Yes, sir.
And one of them is Bruce Smith Jr.
Yes, sir.
That's the same 7-year-old kid who was there in the house with you?
No, sir. He was the younger one. He's the third.
All right. So she told me that every time she would want you to discipline the kids, you would say that, okay, let me talk to them. And she would say, what do you mean talk to them? You need to whoop them. But
yes.
But you would say, no, I'm going to talk to them.
She did. That is correct. She did used to say that.
Yeah. She vouched for you.
Oh, that's good.
That's what she said.
Yes,
she said that, she said that you can't be that guy.
Right.
Because she has seen you with kids and she can vouch for you.
Yes, sir.
So the article that I mentioned, it says a former maintenance man is on his way to prison for life for beating his girlfriend's 4-year-old son to death. An Orlando jury determined that Bruce Smith, 38, killed the boy last July by slamming his head into the floor or a wall.
Yes, sir.
Prosecutor said Smith then put the injured child to bed, where he apparently lay unconscious as death drew near. So, how much truth is in this paragraph?
It's none of it. None of it is the truth. I never even touched them. Their brothers, they had their 2 brothers take the stand, and their brothers literally told a story. They lied on the stand, and they asked them, have your mother ever beat y'all? They said no, and they have. They all had those scars, and I used to tell her all the time, you're going to get in trouble by beating these kids. You hitting these kids too much. Some say these boys, you can talk to them.
The article was saying that you slammed the boy and his head hit the floor. And you're saying that you never even you never even saw the kid, let alone touch him.
No, sir. That day, I didn't never see when I was at the apartment complex, but I never came to her house because at that day that I was there, like I said, I was waiting on some tenants to come in. And so when I saw her, she was there, and she just asked me because the apartment was like 2 doors down from hers. And so I was sitting outside with my son, and she just asked me to sit because they was in bed, and she said she only had a couple of loads or something like that to dry. And she said it shouldn't take that long. So I said, okay, then that I had to sit there anyway. And but I never went in the room to check on them. She told me they was in bed, so, they was asleep. So I said, well, ain't wasn't no reason to go inside to see them because they sleep, So I never did that.
Yeah. And they never checked for your DNA on the boy?
No, sir, they didn't.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that explains a lot.
Yeah.
And let me continue with the article. It says, details about what caused the attack were sketchy, but it appears Smith was angry about some spilled water, said Assistant State Attorney Robin Wilkerson, who prosecuted the case this week in Orlando. So, where did this theory about spilled water came from that you were angry at the kid?
When I want to say they kind of made that up because once Children and Family did come and they did take her kids. Okay, so when somehow between Children and Family getting the kids and her auntie getting the kids back, then that came out saying that one of the kids was in the tub. One of them took a bath, which was her oldest son. She said he took a bath, and the children said they contradicted a lot of the things that they were saying from what the prosecutor was saying, Ms. Wilkinson. The kids said that their brother was in the tub with them. Well, Teresa's saying that he never took a bath. So, I don't know how they come up with that because all of them were saying different stories, which I didn't see him take a bath. But she said he did never take a bath and they still had the same clothes on from when she left. So that's where the water come in at because somebody was trying to say that he had took a bath because one of the boys say he was in the tub with them, and so that's where that comes from.
Mm-hmm. And it goes on, when the boy's mother returned to her Orange County home after doing laundry, she thought her child was asleep, but when Cameron failed to stir, she realized that something was wrong. She rushed him to the hospital where he died. But there's a lot of holes in this too. The boy didn't die at the first hospital. He died at the second hospital. Is that correct?
Yes, he did, and that was literally 4 days later.
Yeah, the article failed to mention that. And,
right, and then they...
Go ahead.
Okay, no, and then they also failed to say that I was the one took him to the hospital, and I saw that and I kind of read that and I was like, they just, and basically what I think they just tried to put it in the jury's mind because, a lot of times the jury hears a lot of stuff on news media, newspapers and such as, stuff like that. So with her saying that, they was trying to paint a picture for them, saying that, I disappeared, I didn't go to the hospital, like I had done something or like I had to run or something, and that's what I kind of gathered out of it. But I took him to the hospital. I'm the one who wanted to take him. She didn't want to take him, and I had no reason to run.
Yeah, it shows that everything that's written in this article is false from your perspective. Would that be correct to say?
Yes, sir, it is.
Yeah. I don't know how these journalists are being... these journalists are being allowed to write something like this. They're a part of the Centennial staff. This is Orlando Centennial. So let's continue a little more on this article. First of all, about this article, you were informed by a police officer. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. It was a Detective Hayes, if I'm not mistaken, concerning that he had died. He came to the county jail.
Yeah. So a lot of police officers, they make their police reports and they send it across to the media, and then the media reports directly what they are fed by the police officers and by the detectives. So this kind of proves what I'm saying, because these are all lines of what they were saying to you, what they were using to, I think, frame you.
Right, it was. Yes, sir, it was.
All right, so let's move forward. And the fact that this article was written in April of 2001, I don't know what these guys were doing from July of 2000.
Right.
They were just asleep?
They had to be, because they didn't put anything in there from that day. You know, even when I was arrested, they had an article saying something where they made a comment on the news saying that I had been arrested for allegedly beating him to death. And now, you know, you need to be mindful that even though they saying that in the paper, they saying that he was slammed into a wall or on a floor. Now, if I was convicted and you actually knew what the crime was, you would have known whether it was a floor or a wall. But they failed to mention that all the experts that took the stand during my trial said that neither one of them could have happened. They didn't put that in there, you know.
Yeah. They didn't put what the experts were saying, and they put assumptions in the article that they failed to prove themselves.
Right, that's right.
Man. I mean, that's some lowball journalism, that's what I would say. So let me continue with this lowball journalism. His two older brothers, ages 7 and 10, testified in court that they saw Smith hit their sibling. What is this?
Yeah, that's what one of them saying. They said, and actually they didn't say it. The state attorney said it, and all they said was yes. Say, did you see Bruce slam your brother into a wall? One said yes. Did you see Bruce slam him on the floor? Another one said yes. They had two. They was on the stand at two different times, but technically, out of their mouth, when they took the stand, the prosecutor asked them, say, do you remember the day that your brother went to the hospital? Both of them said no. Said, do you remember that he had got hurt on a certain day? They said no. So from that point on, they kind of led the witness by saying things, and then all they had to do was just say yes or no.
And then, late Wednesday, the jury found Smith guilty of first-degree murder and aggravated child abuse. I mean, this sounds like a pack of bullshit to me. Excuse my language, but this is what it deserves. It's bullshit.
Yes, sir, it is. And, you know, and they, and I was just, you know, concerning the law itself, because they told me that, okay, being that you have been indicted for first-degree felony murder, we don't have to prove that you killed nobody. We just got to prove that you committed a felony. Well, based upon that, you know, you had the experts took the stand and said that what the boys said, it couldn't have happened. So how was I convicted of a felony? Because the aggravated child abuse wasn't, they didn't find me. I mean, they wasn't proven, put it that way. Because both things that y'all saying, the boys said, when they took the stand, they denied it. They saying that they couldn't remember that day. And then, on top of that, it didn't match what the doctor said. And so how could I be found guilty? They told me if I'm found guilty of aggravated child abuse, they can just find me guilty automatically for the murder. They don't have to prove the murder. And that's what they did.
Mm-hmm. Wow. They don't have to prove the murder.
No, sir, not on a felony. When they charge you with a felony murder, they say the only thing that they had to prove was a felony was committed, and they can give them a murder charge, and that's what happened.
Yeah, I mean, they can give you any charges they want, but it's incumbent upon the defense attorney to show the truth.
Right, exactly.
A charge is not a fact. A charge is not the truth. It's just a charge that is either pushed back or proved. I don't think the court. Right, that's right. I don't think the prosecutors were able to prove that you had anything to do with this murder. What would you say to that?
Yes, sir. I agree with that, because the whole time I was sitting in the courtroom, based on all the experts taking the stand and saying that, you know, none of the stuff that the state presented could have happened. Now, the state theory was to just put me there between 6 and 8 o'clock. Well, from what the experts say, that it couldn't have happened between 6 and 8. It had to happen between 8 and time of admission to the hospital. That's what they said. Now, during that time, Teresa was back in the house, and she was there with them.
So what you're saying is the experts are saying that it could have happened after she returned from the laundromat.
Yes, they put the time, at time of admission, they said an hour plus or minus a few minutes. Well, he was admitted at 10:30.
Okay.
So she said she got back from the laundromat at 8 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
So, so they saying that it happened between 8 and 10:30.
Yeah, or it could have happened before she left for the laundromat.
Exactly. Now that's what I'm saying, because I don't know. And they kept asking me, did I see her do it? And I told them, no, I wasn't there when she beat him. I mean, when I came there, she just told me to look in on him, and by the time she came back, shortly after that, I left. So, it wasn't like I was there with her the whole time, because I ended up leaving her there, going to McDonald's, getting some food, and coming back. So,
yeah.
During that time, and that was after 8. But I think what happened to him had happened before she had left.
All right. So again, I'm going to take you back to this article, because there's not a lot of material available on your case, which is also weird.
Mm-hmm.
But whatever that we have is full of holes as well. Because let me continue with this article. So the circuit judge Donald
Griswold,
he sentenced you to life plus 15 years in prison, just like that.
Yes, sir, he did.
Based on this.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then the defense lawyer Trish Cashman tried to blame the boy's mother for the death. She said Teresa Smith, 27, was home at the time experts estimated the fatal head injury occurred.
Exactly.
This goes against everything that I've been reading from the article.
Right. That's the same thing I just said. All the experts put the time during the time she was there.
Yeah. So they just put this article at the end of they just put this line somewhere in the middle, try to maybe create some balance. But then Cashman said the mother, a machine operator, admitted using corporal punishment on her children in the past.
Yes, she did.
The judges and the defense attorney, they didn't look at that, hey, this mother, we got to investigate what this mother has been up to.
Right. Well, they did a motion to, I think the name of it was motion in limine or something like that. And what that does, to hide evidence that the state don't want to come out to the jury. And the judge granted her motion, and later I found out that, the motion that she had put in for the jury not to hear was that Teresa had been Baker acted, that she done had a suicide attempt, that her husband was in prison for the same thing, for abusing the same little boy, which was his little boy, and beating the other kids. And then her other kid's father was in prison for allegedly, I think, beating his son. The two oldest boys was someone else's, and I think their dad was in prison for what she say he did to the kids. But he was saying the same thing. He said she did it, that he didn't do it, but he ended up in prison. So, and then her husband ended up in prison for a crime that they both did to the children. So that was what they hid inside this motion that she filed.
So what you're saying is that based on this, probably the other guys who are in prison didn't really do what they've been accused of too. Yes,
sir. My understanding there, her first kid's father saying whatever happened, she had done it.
Mm-hmm. So at least the first father is on the record saying that I didn't do it, and they put him in prison because she testified against him.
I think so, yes, sir.
By the way, the thing about your defense attorney, Trish Cashman, saying that, the mother was at home at the time of the fatal injury, and that, she had admitted using corporal punishment, and that she had admitted using corporal punishment on children in the past. All of this is at the end of the article. So this was what would you say about this article, by the way?
Well, I really didn't like it because what happened, my sister-in-law had read it, and she's a school teacher, and she kind of brought it to my attention, and she wrote the Orlando Sentinel concerning that article, telling them, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, we do have a letter, the actual letter that she wrote to the Orlando Sentinel, and telling them that all that was lies that they put in this paper. and she kind of went on trying to correct them with what should have been said and shouldn't have been said, but they was, a lot of that stuff, she went totally against it.
Yeah. And all of the stuff that we're talking about is public record. I mean, people can go and check out what you're saying. And in fact, I think that letter, we have a copy of that letter on justicenews.net / justice for
Yes, sir.
Bruce Smith.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
On justicenews.net / justice for Bruce Smith is where we have a copy of that letter, where we'll be putting up a lot of the stuff about your case. So let me just rewind a little bit of what we talked about.
Mm-hmm.
You never entered the room where the boy was asleep.
No, sir.
You never touched the boy.
No, sir.
You never even looked at him asleep in that room.
No, sir. Only time I looked at him when she asked me what was that on his face, and he was in her arms at that time.
And we have a witness for that, who is your boy, who was 7 at that time.
Yes, sir.
And did they put him on a stand to ask him that, hey, did you see your dad touch him, beat Cameron, or hit Cameron?
No, he never took the stand, but he did do a deposition, and he told her that from my understanding, that he did see Teresa whoop the kids, and that's how I knew about it, because he told me that she whooped him while he was sitting there in the house. She heard him whooping him and heard her telling the kids to shut up, and so he said he could hear the kids screaming and crying and stuff.
So was that after she came back or before he left for the laundromat?
That was before she left.
Okay, so this goes back to my point, what I was trying to make earlier, that this could have happened before she took off for the laundromat.
Yes, sir. Exactly. Yes, sir.
According to your son's statement, before she left, he heard her beat Cameron.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and then... Go ahead.
No, I was just saying, from what he told me, they all got a beating.
They all got a beating.
Yeah.
And then she came out and she asked you to look over the kids while she goes to the laundromat.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, something is weird here. It's like covering my tracks. If I had harmed someone, and if I would want to put this on someone else, this is probably what I would do if I have a satanic mind and try to hurt someone. Probably this is what I would do, because obviously when this occurred, whatever happened between her and the kids, when she heard that boy, she knew something was not right.
Right.
And that's when she came to you and asked you to look over while she's gone, so probably to screw you over.
Yes, sir. That's what happened.
Yeah,
but,
and I'm not even an attorney, and I'm making all these assumptions, but I would like to clarify to the listener that I'm making these assumptions based on the evidence, the facts that are in front of us.
Right.
This is not like some imaginary tale that I'm making up. These are all extrapolations that are coming out from looking at the evidence.
Right. Yes, sir.
Yeah, and if anyone wants to push me back, they should first answer me that a woman who was on suicide watch, and you call it the Baker...
Yeah,
what do you call it?
Baker acted. Baker acted.
Baker active?
Yes, well, Baker act. It's a Baker act. It's what happened when someone is incompetent or they need medical attention, or you just can't function on your own, or you need some sort of assistance. They Baker act you so that you would be held. My thing was, if you're Baker acted and they saying that she's incompetent, how did she take the stand? Because you can't have someone incompetent. But at the time she took the stand, she was on 5 different types of medication, which she admitted on the stand that she was on.
Unbelievable. This is like a bad movie that I'm watching.
Yes, sir.
This is like a terrible movie, because, how can they put somebody on stand who's Baker active?
Yes, sir. And I mean, I asked him, can she take the stand? I asked my lawyer several times, and she's saying, well, Bruce, I didn't check into that. I say, well, wow, there's a lot of things you didn't check into, and being that she was Baker acted and on suicide watch, I thought, and then not only that, but she was up under 5 different psychic drugs at the time. She was on the stand, kind of raised a flag with me, because I was like, well, how can she take the stand? How can you believe something she's saying if she's under the influence,
So you're talking about your defense lawyer, Trish Cashman.
Yes.
Yeah. So if I would just put all of this aside and ask you something, Bruce, did you kill Cameron?
No, sir, I didn't. I would never touch him. He was actually a very good kid. I have told her that several times, but she always said he always getting hurt. He always hurting himself. He do this and do that. All her kids was good kids. It's just that they didn't have a father figure there in the house. So I don't know if she just took it out because they wasn't there, or she was mad at their dads. I don't know what it was, but she used to just discipline them so much. I didn't even know she had kids about the first week I was there, because she kept them in a room and they was quiet.
Yeah, and when there was a father figure, he ended up in prison, like yourself.
Exactly, yes, sir.
Yeah. So something is terribly wrong, and there are a lot of holes in this case. And so what's been going on the past 20 years, Bruce?
Well, I can tell you I've been trusting in God, for one, and praying a lot that, she would come forth and at least admit to what she had done, or she should have done, Back in 2010, I got a letter from her. The letter came from Las Vegas, somewhere where she's living, I'm assuming right now. And the letter said that she was sorry for what she had done. She hoped that I forgive her, and she forgive me for any pain, and but she didn't have a return address on it, but she did sign the bottom of the letter.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that's admission of guilt?
Yes, sir, I do. I tried to present it to a lawyer and ask a couple of attorneys about it, but the thing they told me was, Bruce, she's not admitting to the crime. Well, I mean, in so many words, to me she is, because if she's saying those words, that means she did something she wasn't supposed to do,
Yeah, and even if she's not admitting it, at least it opens up a case to question her, subpoena her.
Yes, sir, it does.
Reopen the case, because, a wrong man is sitting in prison for over 2 decades now.
Yes, sir.
So, what about, did you try to get attorneys and reopen your case or appeal?
Yes, sir, I did. My mom dad had hired an attorney. He did get my case where they got some stuff back in court, because he admitted to, Teresa admitted on the stand about her discipline. The kids couldn't identify me in court. He was saying that the judgment of acquittal should have been granted because there was no evidence proving that I did anything. And then he went back on what the doctor said, from what the boys say. Y'all saying that the aggravated child abuse, but the boys saying that from what they saying happened, the doctor said it didn't happen. So how can you prove the aggravated part if they saying one thing and the expert saying another one, and then they have to, most of the time we based our decisions on experts' opinion. And so how can you go against a little boy? And then it was the state theory to say that it was between 6 and 8. But the expert said it couldn't have happened between 6 and 8 because he'd have been dead at the time of admission. So, I mean, it's just so much that where the conviction should have been upheld.
So then what happened?
Well, what they did, they ended up going to the jury. The jury did deliberate, but my thing was, when it comes to all of the experts' opinions in my decision, that they should have based their decision on what the experts said, because they are more qualified and know more about what they examined this child. And even based on that, the medical examiner took the stand, and he said during my trial that he had a skull fracture. Well, when I got his autopsy records, in his records say there was no skull fracture. But he took the stand and said it on the stand, but in his writing, they said none. So, it just, he lied on the stand.
So he lied?
And, and I got all this in record, so, if anything that I have said, I mean, you can go to the records and read it for yourself because it's there.
Yeah. So in these 20 years, there was never an appeal or a follow-up. You never went back to court to fight this. You just accepted?
No, sir. I think I have put in at least 25 to 30 different types of motions during this time that I have been in. And I know I haven't been back to court, but on one occasion, the court did, on several occasions, to be honest with you, they ordered a show cause order based on my motion, and the state, their answer was that inmates think that they are lawyers, and they shouldn't, the books and stuff that they have is outdated, so we shouldn't listen to these case laws and all this stuff that he has in his motion. Well, based on that, the judge denied my motion based on that and didn't even hear the merits of the case. And I think that was wrong, because when you order a show cause, it's based on merit to what, you have raised, and they got to answer why he shouldn't be granted relief. And I wasn't. I was denied due process even for that,
Yeah.
And it's a lot.
Yeah, probably because the prosecutors were afraid that if the Pandora's box opens up and all the evidence comes out, there's going to be multiple lines of lawsuits coming out.
Right, it will. Yes, sir, it will. And you have to be mindful, too, during these extensive appeals that I put in, most of the appeals went back to the same judge and the same prosecutor. So they're not going to admit they're wrong. They're going to try to get avoided any kind of way they can. So, if I'd have had a different judge or maybe someone else to hear it, it may have turned out a little different. But if they have to keep going back to every motion I was filing was going back to the same judge and the same prosecutor, and all they had to do was say the same thing, and the judge was, no matter what she said, he granted it.
Yeah. I mean, that is weird, because you can't go back to the same people who wrongfully convicted you.
Right.
Yeah, and for the prosecutors to say that the people who are incarcerated think that they're attorneys, well, we have many cases, factual, clear cases, where incarcerated people
have got them overturned.
Vindicated themselves.
That's right.
Yeah, they got it overturned. I mean, a lot of them even know more than the prosecutors and the judges and the attorneys themselves.
That's right. That's right.
So that was wrong. We have Supreme Court cases overturned because people from inside the prisons fought.
That's right. That's right.
For justice.
That's right. And I have learned a lot about that myself, because I have been studying law, and I have been sitting here the whole time. I have went and got different degrees in brick mason, electrical, plumbing, and I also been doing a lot of legal work, law studying the law, and that's how come I can look at it now at a different angle, because I can see where they violated a lot of the laws and where they broke the law with charging me and trying to find me guilty for a crime that I did not commit. And going back on what you said, I don't know what they was hiding. Maybe it was. And, when you got a hospital, the first hospital that we took him to had sustained him, gave him a shot of barbiturates, and even after he went to this first hospital, they said they was transferred into another one. Well, the doctors took the stand and said when he arrived at the second hospital, they didn't have nothing to go on, so they did this process all over again, which gave him another dose of barbiturates.
Man. And
in the autopsy report, it showed that his blood work went to a Walford research laboratory where they tested it, and it came back positive and high for barbiturates. And they saying the barbiturates was 0.200 milligrams, which is an overdose. And in lethal injection on death row, they give you 0.5 .150, and then he had 0.200 in him, and then they go by your weight, your age, and your condition. And they saying it was an overdose for someone on asthma. They say because if you got a health condition, it's extremely dangerous, and he had asthma.
So now we just opened up another Pandora's box, which was my eventual question, but you brought it to light. Now we have another scenario where you guys take the kid to the hospital. He's alive.
Yes, he was breathing.
And at the first hospital, they gave him barbiturates. Yes,
sir. Barbiturates is a drug that take over your nervous system.
Yeah, and they gave him, at that time, a lethal dose.
At the first hospital, it wasn't lethal. It was the right amount at the first hospital. When he went to the second hospital, they inserted the lethal dose because they did the process all over again, and that's where the lethal dose come in.
All right, so there's a huge probability that the hospital ended up killing the boy.
Yes, sir. And that's what I mean. It took me a while to just research it and do a lot of medical research concerning, researching the barbiturates and seeing what it consists of and what it does to the human body. And being that I went through all that, I found out that, for one, it go by his age, and, he was a 4-year-old weighing 40 pounds or 45 pounds or something like that, and they saying even what they administrated from the beginning was a little high, but he could have bared it. But then when you put a whole nother dose of that same amount in him, he said that could kill anybody, not just a little boy, but it could kill a grown man.
So was this point brought to the trial?
No, sir, it wasn't. I didn't even know anything about it till I had been in prison 2 years, and I had to get an attorney to get the records and send them to me. I had to pay him to get the records from me and send them to me, not knowing what I would find. But when I did get them, that was there.
So what you're saying is that they overdosed the boy with a lethal injection. I mean, you're saying that they used that in death row?
Yes, sir. They use the cocktail on death row. They give you 3 cocktails on death row, and that is one of them. What that cocktail does, it go into your bloodstream and take over your nervous system. So when the other cocktail go in you that stops your heart, usually it give you a burn, and you can feel the reaction, where some of the guys would be jumping and moving because they can feel the pain. But this barbiturates take over your nervous system, so you can't jump, you can't do it, and that's what it does.
Unbelievable, man. Unbelievable stuff. So, I mean, we need to find what happened with you in this case, but we also need to find what happened to that little boy.
Yes, sir, we do. And I'll be more than glad. I want to find out, because the ones that are in charge of his death should be punished. They should be charged.
Yeah. I don't even know what to ask anymore. Because your last line just said it all, man.
Yes, sir. And I mean, it's just, it hurts because I have been here, and like I say, by the grace of God, He has helped me and showed me different avenues, showed me different things. And, and I'm going to continue to pray for him. I'm going to continue to pray for the family, and hope that, and praying that she would one day just come out, or whoever, and just acknowledge what they had done to him, and at least take some sort of responsibility for it. I have done time for something that I had never done. And I mean, it hurt. Yes, I have cried many, many, many nights. But I just thank God that this is finally coming to a head where somebody can hear it, and maybe somebody can help do something about it.
Well, we will, with the help of God.
This is FairPlay on JusticeNews.net. This is FairPlay on FireJusticeNews.net.
J 1 7 7 7 7 7